Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charnby, and this is a church in Leicestershire. This is the Church of St Mary Magdalene, Stapleford. And it's a brilliant example of 18th century Gothic revival, what's known as the Strawberry Hill Gothic, named after the amazing Walpole House in Twickenham. This church is built in 1883 by Robert Lord Harborough. Robert Sherard, as he was before he became Lord Harborough, was in fact the younger brother of the previous Lord Harborough. So he's the fourth Earl. Anyway, he succeeds his brother. And Robert Sherard wasn't expecting to be Lord Harborough. He was, in fact, a country clergyman at Tea nearby. And inheriting a fortune, this conscientious country clergyman decided one of the things he would do, he'd use it to build churches. He first of all rebuilt his own church in 1782, and then this is the church for his family home. And he had very definite ideas about how a church should be. He was a Georgian clergyman, and one of the things he thought was that the church should have the communion table at one end and the pulpit at the other. Now, at Tea, he does this in a more or less straightforward manner. Here, because this is his family church, this is in his estate, it's within the grounds of the mansion. What he does is he says he actually decides that the family pew is going to be the pulpit, and he will preach from his pew. We'll see that as we go round. So this is a fantastic building designed by a friend, in fact, of the minister, of the rector, and Robert Sherard, Lord Harborough, decides what he's going to do: build a church, get a church done the way churches ought to be. So this is what happens when a clergyman with very definite ideas about church architecture inherits a fortune and has the opportunity to build the kind of church that he wants. It's slightly less eccentric than Tea, and hopefully a future video I'll go to Tea. But right now we'll have a look at this church and see the features that are to do with, it's a country house church, it's designed by a rector, by an Anglican clergyman, and it's designed according to his ideas as to how the service, and it's the Prayer Book Church of England service, how that service is to be performed. So we'll look around and we'll see these Georgian features. So let's get to it then. So as ever, we start at the west end of the nave. And you can see immediately the seating here. You have these collegiate-style raked pews either side, and a wide space in the middle. Now, at one point, the wide space, one thing that could be used for was free seats. You'd have your free pews for poor people who weren't paying in rows in the middle. And at the end, we've got the communion table. You see the chancellor is just this tiny little niche, really, with the table in. And then you've got two little transepts, so it's vaguely cruciform. Now, although this is a new build in the 1780s, it is not a brand new site. And we see that as we go around. This is not a brand new site, this is just a new build on an existing site. And so there are some memorials, family memorials. Again, this is the family home of the man who's doing the rebuild. So as we move west, we see in the middle of the floor there is a memorial, a brass here. And this is one of the ancestors. Anyway, you can see the large family, you can see the heir in the middle, and then there's the daughters on the one side and the sons on the other. And here we have, this is Ralph Sherard. Yes, Ralph Sherard, so he's an ancestor of the chap who builds this. And this very collegiate style. See the pulpit there. Now the pulpit's a late tradition. Originally there would not have been this pulpit, but when you get a new minister who is not also the squire, then you need a pulpit, and they decide to go for a more orthodox location for the pulpit. And we have this nice little communion table with the rail around it. In typical Anglican, you go to the rail to kneel to receive communion. And we have the Sherard memorials here. This is this is Bennett, the first Earl, and there he is with his wife and child. And you can see up above you've got that. So that's the first of the really big memorials. We've got a number of, this is a number of other small memorials. We've got the Lord's Prayer and the Ten Commandments, the other half. And then over here we have the really, you've got Bennett Sherard, Philip Sherard, Robert Sherard in the corner there is the chap who actually builds the church. They're all, of course, in sort of Roman outfits, but except at the top you've got Bennett Sherard, and he is sort of your big founder thing, so you've got a dove at the top. And then you've got William Lord Sherard here, and there he is, that's Sir William Sherard, Lord Sherard, Baron of Leitrim in Ireland. And this nice 17th century there, there's got the children, and you can see the very affecting, these little babies who died in infancy are depicted as well. And behind the pulpit now, we turn west, and here you have this great composition at the back. Now, as I say, Robert Sherard has this definite idea about the table and the pulpit being opposite ends of the building. And that was the family pew. The building now is redundant. It's cared for by the Church Conservation Trust. The big house is a hotel. The large estate staff who this basically was built for, of course, that's not the case anymore. These big estates have gone. So you've got this situation where it doesn't really relate anymore to any need in the area. I said this is what's known as the Strawberry Hill Gothic, and it's sometimes spelled Gothic with a K. And it's the sort of thing that the Victorians really, a lot of them didn't like. So you've got this fake vault, which is really all plaster up there. You've got a mixture of things that look kind of medieval-y, but also things that are a little bit neoclassical. So it's all a bit weird, and it's great. However, and the pulpit is in the same sort of style, although it's in the same sort of style. It has this sort of Gothic stuff that basically the general design scheme here doesn't actually fit that pulpit, so I suspect it comes from somewhere else. You'll notice also there's no three-decker setup. What, of course, Robert Sherard did was he preached from his family pew up there, and he'd do his reading from the family pew as well, and the parish clerk would have a seat somewhere. Because Sherard had his ideas. There go the lights, and then they come on again. It's all obviously motion sensors. So Sherard had definite ideas about what the service should be and how it should be done. And so it's important for us now to go up the stairs to the family pew, among other things to see how family pews work. Because certainly this is the best family pew I've been to in any of these videos. And the idea of the family pew basically is this is where the big house family will sit through the service. And they're up here, and they can look down at everybody in the church below, and everyone down there pretty much works for them in some capacity. You'd have the actual servants, and you'd have the people who worked on the estate, the tenant farmers as well. And this enormous space. And from here we are in the centre here now. From here, Robert Sherard, Lord Harborough, would preach his sermons. And then when communion came, and communion I'm not sure what his views on how often communion should be were, but whenever they had the communion service, after the sermon, after the first part of the service, he would go down and walk down the middle of the church to the table at the end. Now, we'll have a look at the rest of it. I say this is cared for by the Church Conservation Trust, so there's a little bit of a not so well, it needs a little bit of work. There's always work to be done. And you see here, these are the chairs. You have chairs out here for the family. And the fireplace, because of course it gets cold, and particularly back in the 18th century, the climate was colder. It's what's called the end of the Little Ice Age in this country. And so you needed heating. You have a fire here. And above we have the sacrifice of Isaac. You see there's Abraham, he's got Isaac tied up, Isaac laying on the altar, and there is the angel pointing out the ram caught in a thicket. It's incumbent upon Anglican churches, there's a law that says you have to have the royal coat of arms, and there it is. A nice bit of plaster work, again, because of and it all fits in really well with this nice, you see this gilded, and this lovely plaster work, so very 18th century. This is perhaps one of the most gorgeous 18th century churches. It's big, because it's for this big estate with all these tenant farmers and all these workers. So that's the inside here then at Stapleford. Let's go down and see what's outside. Before we go fully outside, this is the porch. It's underneath the tower, and you've got PSC vault, nice stone vault ceiling, and you can see it's basically octagonal. This door here leads up into the tower stairs, so you can access the bells and the ringing chamber above. And again, it's this very elegant appearance. So here we are outside at St Mary's Stapleford, and you can see again this Gothic revival. It's still a little thin, perhaps, that it hasn't got the beefiness of even some perpendicular, but it's getting there. And again, this is yes, he's not the architect, Sherard, but Lord Harborough, but he has definite ideas. This is what the building needs to look like. So we'll have a look around the outside, and again we'll see some of these features that are to do with his ideas as to what a church should be like. So as I've said, T is really Sherard's ideal church. This is the big estate version, and you can see these coats of arms all along here, the shields, and they are all families to whom the Sherards are related. So it's, as you've got the memorials inside to the family, so on the outside you've got this declaring who we are and where we come from and who are our relatives. Of course, being Georgian, this is a Protestant building. We've seen how it's laid out with the preacher at one end, the table at the other, and how it's laid out so people can all look to the preacher. It's a Protestant Anglican church. It's long before the Anglo-Catholic movement came into being. It's picturesque, again, because it's Georgian, and also because he's aristocratic. If you were to compare this to the churches, the chapels rather, that are built by the Counts of Huntingdon, you get the same thing. You see there's the coronet in the middle. You see the same sort of style, this picturesque Gothic, because they're aristocrats. They're emphasising their taste. They're emphasising also something, and one of the things about the Gothic is it's historical. It's saying we are not sort of new people. Now this was a period of the 1780s when Gothic architecture was being very much revived, as we can see here, but you still have people building neoclassical and Baroque churches. But here he's gone with the Gothic, partly because of this. I'm emphasising my family has a long and storied history here. This isn't something brand new. This is a replacement for a medieval church, and it resembles in some ways a medieval church, even while the whole layout and everything else pretty much is the church. Well, it is Georgian. You can see there at the bottom that round window that is where the porch is, and then above that blanked window, that's the ringing chamber. And as we go round, we'll see other things. We get round to the west front, because of course this is one of these places where the west front is the main entrance. You go in through the tower and you have that great vista ahead of you, picturesque, and it's all about a very careful giving the right impression. So there we are, and isn't it absolutely amazing? And yes, it's still the same kind of general forms that you will find, the general shape of building rather, that you would find with a Baroque structure, but it's all very Gothic-y and a bit wedding cake, a bit of a Gothic wedding cake. And you can see we've got the clock up there. That is not the time; it has stopped. But originally, of course, it would have rung out the hours, and everyone around the estate could hear the chiming of the bell. So that is at the front here. So you've got Sherard and the Sherard arms on one side of the door, and that very typically Georgian OG door case, very Strawberry Hill there. So very much of the period, and very much this, we are the, and very much, I have the money, I want a new church, and I will build this new church, and undoubtedly because he's replacing an old building that's a bit run down, I want this new church to reflect how churches ought to be, in my opinion. And this is why, if your minister gets a huge amount of money, then your minister will often do this sort of thing. I will build a new church. So there we are. And so there you have it, St Mary Magdalene, Stapleford, the answer to the question, what happens when the vicar inherits an estate and a fortune? And the answer is he built his own perfect church. So hope you've enjoyed this. It's a lovely building. I've been meaning to get to it for a while now, and finally managed to get out and do a video of this remarkable Georgian Gothic church. So thank you for watching. May God bless you and keep you until next time.